Okay, so now that we have the UCAT scores in, I did the video, as you probably saw just now, that I've released at the same time as this, which is the breakdown, what they mean, and maybe what you should do. But really, when it comes down to it, all the UCAT score means is where does that influence as to where I should apply? And what I think would be a lot more helpful is to look at some case studies that we've had with students on the FutureDoc program to show you what we recommend in what scenario. Now, I will say, I'll caveat this with everybody is different and every single application has nuance that will influence where we recommend them, but it's going to help you understand kind of like if you're in the high performers and you're kind of thinking, oh, should I go for Oxbridge or should I not? Is it a bit of a stretch? If you're really not scoring as well as some of the averages and you're thinking, am I even going to get in? Where should I apply to maximize my chances? Or if you're somewhere in the middle and you're thinking, how do I give myself the best chance? Or I want to get a gun for this particular university. What do I need to adapt about my application to do that? So we'll try and cover as many scenarios as possible, and we'll cover all the ranges to help you understand. So let's go through. Let's look at the first one. So this is a query from a high performer. So I'm predicted A star, A star, A, and have 9s across the board at GCSE. My UCAT score is 2,270 with a band 1 at SJT. Can I apply to Oxford? So firstly, well done. That puts you in the top 10% of test takers. So that is really good. But what I'll bear in mind is that Oxbridge, they look at all-rounders. So they want to see basically people, which you've got academics in, the highest performing academics. They want to see 8s and 9s across the board. They want to see intellectual curiosity. They want to see an interest in research. But they also want to see incredible communication skills and scientific reasoning. So that's why the interview is a big part of it. So academics, a good personal statement, interview are all going to matter a lot. But when it comes to the actual UCAT, so this 2270 is probably a little bit below because what they have done, and again, we're predicting this year based on previous year. Well, we've only got 1 year of UCAT data from Oxford because that's the first time that they did it last year. Then we've changed the exam to reduce one of the sections. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to predict. So when you think that the average person who was invited, shortlisted basically, and invited to interview was 3,090 last year, and the average score of someone who got an offer was 3,130, and we have seen that the average score this year was about 3/4 of the average score last year, we would predict that you basically need to be in the top 5% at least. So this year, that is 2,320. And really, so if you're taking that score that they did last year of 3,130 being the average of the person who got an offer. So if you do 3/4 of that, that's 2,350. So we need to be really kind of like beyond the top 5% really to be in with the chance, not in with the chance actually, to be confident that we'll at least get in front of the interview panel at Oxford, which is really what we're aiming for. If you feel like you're good, it's all going to rest on that. So what I would say is, so in this situation, remember, it is an average, right? So let's think about this. The average person who got invited to interview was 3,090. 3/4 of that is about 2,310, 20, something like that. But remember, that is the average. So we're not a million miles off this. So if we're confident that we can do well at interview, then maybe it is worth considering. And these things always come in the context of the other 3 applications that you're doing. So this is a great score. So it's likely that they'll get invited to interview in the other universities that they choose, right? So I think that it's not it's a sensible thing. If you think that like the next highest competitive, like say London universities, UCL was 2,800 cut off last year. So that 3/4 of that is 2,100. So we're comfortably within that. So really for other universities, you have a good chance of being invited, not only to interview and doing, who knows about interview. It's such an important thing that we spend so much time preparing for and that people need to not overlook. So this person on the FutureDoc program will very likely be well prepared for interview because it's a huge part of what we do. But that has such a big influence on it. So if you're doing this and you're not confident in interview skills, maybe don't gamble. But at the same time, it's about the other one. So we can have one of our 4 that's like an ambitious one, a risky one. And as long as we're kind of sensible with the other ones, that's what matters as well. So like I say, it's a very complicated thing, and one university choice influences the other. So it's not just the one yes or no, it's how it varies in the context of everything else. Okay, so then moving on. So my UCAT score is 2010 with a band 2 SJT. I'm on a gap year and I got A star AA, but I don't want to leave London. Is it a good idea to only apply within London? Okay, so London are incredibly competitive. I'd say 2000 score is going to be too low for places like King's, and like I said about UCL, probably won't reach the cutoff because they're very high. However, St George's is maybe still a good option. That is something that we could do if really London is the it's like a non-negotiable to leave. I imagine for most people it's like I would rather get a place at medical school. Yeah, I would consider the London one, like some of the London ones that aren't going to be a complete waste. Barts usually have very high requirements, especially for grad. But yeah, I think if they are thinking about if they want to have a chance and London is so important, then you could maybe use one of those places to apply to Barts as well. But again, this is why every single situation and case is different, because this person has their A levels already. They've got them in hand. We need to bear in mind whether they have applied to some of those universities already, because that will factor in as to whether they are allowed to reapply to them. Whether these exams are resits or none of that. But having those A levels in the bank is quite a big factor, because when medical schools look at this and go, will we make this person an offer? They sometimes the question is, we'll make them an offer, but will they actually get the A levels? Is it just a waste of an offer? But when they know that people have made the grade, then that is a really positive thing that influences people and makes them more likely to decide. And then for this person, sorry, I would say another option is maybe if they maybe in southeast London, in places like Brighton or Kent and Medway. Those are good options if they want to stay close. So next one is, let's have a look. I have a UCAT score of 1910 and a band 1 in my SJT. Predicted grades are AAB. I think I qualify for contextual admissions due to my school. Where can I apply strategically? Okay, so again, such a wider conversation. And this is why on the FutureDoc program we sit down for a long time with students to go through this and pick the right four. But if I'm just saying, off the bat, contextual offers, they can be tricky and it depends on the situation. But one of the places that I like to recommend, if you meet the criteria, is Hull and York Medical School. They have a 40% weighting on the UCAT. They have a 30% for your GCSEs. 15% is based on the SJT band. So really good. They have a minimum cutoff of band 3. You need to at least or above, so 1, 2, or 3. But they have weighting on the SJT band. So that is a really good one. If you've got 4, that you get an immediate rejection. But yeah, it's a good option. There are several, and it depends on circumstance, like I say. But it's a really good one. So next one, I made a mess of one section of my UCAT after doing so well in the mocks. I got 1950, but this was mostly due to the QR. Can I apply anywhere? Now this is still in the top half, so don't feel too let down. I mean, Nottingham might be a good option. We have a bit of an unfair advantage because, let me show you. We've created our own little database that a lot of the information is stuff that you can't really get on the web normally. We've got it directly from the universities. But let's say I'm in the kind of 4th decile or above. You can look at some of these places. So these are the kind of places that are really good to look at if you're kind of in that range where you're not really sure. But Nottingham are really good so they place a lot of value on the verbal reasoning, and their cutoff score last year was around the 4th decile. So being in the 5th decile, you're above that. And if you don't know what decile you're in, you can just go to the UCAT website here. Let's have a look. I'll show you. And if you just put 1950, it'll tell you what decile you're in. So in the 61st percentile, right? So this means that you scored better than 61%. So still pretty good, and nothing to worry about too much, really. But this is where I always say it. It's not just about the UCAT score. I can't emphasize this enough. All the other elements are so important. So that's why, I always wish people would come to us before they had the UCAT, because we can make a massive influence. We like to start with people a year before they submit their application so we can get everything about their application right. Work experience, personal statement, choosing the right unis, good UCAT prep so that they do well. If they're a grad, doing, the GAMSAT as well. Getting good interview prep. Interview prep is so important. As soon as your application's in, you should start thinking about interview prep, because it will come with very little notice. And the difference between somebody who's crammed for a couple of weeks before and someone who's actually, taught themselves how to become the real deal is night and day. And I've, sat on a lot of interview panels and seen it clearly when we have people. One of the things we do at the FutureDoc program is we hammer the interview stuff, because not only does it help you get through interviews, it gives you confidence and life skills that are going to help not just to get into medical school, but at medical school and beyond for life, because it's like learning frameworks, learning how to phrase things, learning communication skills are invaluable life skills that they call more force multipliers that are kind of gonna help people do well no matter what industry they're in. Right, next one. I scored 1730 and got a band 2 in the SJT. My predicted grades are AAA. Is there any point in applying this year? I'm based in Scotland. I heard this might help me. So firstly, I would say that if your heart is in this and you've done the prep and you don't mind just submitting an application, you've got everything ready, then you never know sometimes, because again, the UCAT is incredibly important, but it's not the only thing. So if everything else is good, then there is a chance. Now, Scotland does help. Some universities, especially in Scotland, and some others in England and Wales, they'll reward people for being local, basically. Like East Anglia, for example, they give Essex students reduced requirements, so to speak. So for Aberdeen, they've already published, if you're from Scotland, that the UCAT cutoff will be 1610 for those applying in 2025. So they always reduce it a little bit for Scottish people. So Aberdeen's a good option for somebody in this situation. So another query, so here we go. I'm so happy. My UCAT score was 2,140, but I'm resitting A-level biology exam because I only got a B last year. Okay, so firstly, great score. That puts you in the top 20%, and you have many, many options for that. Now, the resit probably doesn't affect you as much as you think. There are places like Leeds, off the top of my head, UCL, Barts, they will preclude you from reapplying if you're resitting A-levels. But there are still fantastic options. King's, Bristol, Exeter, Southampton, they don't mind whether you're resitting your A-levels or not. And then places like Manchester, Liverpool, Nottingham, they do allow resits, but they do have certain conditions, so it will depend a little bit more on your situation. And again, this is why we sit down for a long time with students to go through every little bit, all the little weeds, so that we're making sure that every single detail is the right fit based on that individual circumstances. Okay, moving on. I was rejected last year with a UCAT score of 2,370. Bear in mind, obviously, that was when we had the 4 sections, so that's probably equivalent to, let me just do the maths in my head. So that's probably equivalent to about 1,780-ish this year. So again, not incredible. But anyway, so I've retaken the UCAT and scored 2,020. It's a good advert for coming to the FutureDoc program and doing better. If you didn't do well, how we can help you improve. But so 2020 band SJT band 1. I've already achieved A star at A levels. Will I get in this year? So this reapplying to universities is a complicated question, and on the website we actually have a resource for people who are reapplying. So check that out on the free resources part of the FutureDoc website. But what I'll say is the quick answer is that most universities only care about if you applied to them, not to medicine, right? So some universities, even if you apply to them, as long as you didn't get to a certain stage, usually it's if they reject you after interview, they don't let you reapply. If you've applied to other universities, most of them don't care. There are a couple of exceptions. And again, this is one where obviously this is a student, so we sit down and talk to them about this. But off this alone, I don't know. I would need to know a lot more. But off the bat, places like Anglia Ruskin, Cardiff, Hull and York, Sheffield, based on that UCAT score and the circumstances, those would be good options to look at. So next one, I don't know what's happened with the formatting here, but clearly this is a grad. I've had a 2-1 in English literature and a UCAT score of 1910 with a band 3 SJT. Are there any 5-year undergraduate courses or GEM programs that are more lenient on the UCAT for graduates with non-science degrees? Okay, so this is a great question, and the grads are the ones certainly that work us the hardest because it is definitely complicated. And this is where the magic of kind of helping people get in really works with grads, particularly because it is such a minefield for them, and I feel sorry for them. But when you don't have a science degree, often it comes down to knowing what you scored in your A levels and what subjects you took when it comes to applying to the 5-year course. Okay. So, for example, Lincoln, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Plymouth would be an option, but only if you have science-based A levels. For this reason, we often recommend these types of grad applicants take the GAMSAT because it just makes things a lot easier and opens up a lot of doors. But yeah, grad, I would check out the grad playlist that we have because there are lots of situations and it's very difficult. And I would just recommend that people use that resource to help them understand what to do in each situation. So the next one is another grad. This is my second time sitting the UCAT, and I got 1960 and Band 2 SJT. I have sat the GAMSAT and felt okay about it. Do I go with my UCAT score or trust my GAMSAT? Oh, this is a tough one because grads, I always encourage my grads to aim for the top 5%, beyond, just like top band and beyond. But with this person is just looking at the UCAT score percentile calculator. This person's in the 63rd percentile, so they're kind of almost in the top third. Now, it's always a difficult one because, and this is why I encourage grads to do your GAMSAT in March before you submit your application. So you're going in with at least some data. Also, although we have, I'm biased, but we have an amazing GAMSAT program to help people do well. Statistically, people always do better on the second GAMSAT, and because you take the highest score, it's worth doing it in March and then again in September, unless you do really well in March, and then obviously that's fine. But so it's really hard because the GAMSAT, you don't get the score. If you sit it in September, you won't get the score at the time of you applying. So you are, in effect, applying blind, and that is difficult. And again, this UCAT score is good, but for grad, it needs to be excellent. So it does really pose a difficult conundrum. So what I would do here is, obviously, this is where you speak to the person and you want to know their preferences, what they like, what they have their heart set on, and all of that. But if I'm going purely on UCAT scores, I'd say Edinburgh, Cardiff, and maybe Cumbria are good options for this person. We need to kind of get clear on whether we are going for the 4-year courses or the 5-year courses. I think, like I said, in this situation, it's probably more towards the 5-year courses. But GAMSAT is a big factor as well. And it's how we want to weight that, whether we want to do 2 GAMSAT and 2 UCAT, whether we want to do just 1 GAMSAT and UCAT, or, it really depends on that person's individual risk appetite and, what their preferences are and some other factors that go into it. So it's a really difficult one to give blanket advice on for this. Okay, 2 more. So I'm based in Newcastle and was hoping to stay here, but my UCAT was less than I hoped for, 2030. What should I do? Some universities really love UCAT, and Newcastle is one of them. They have a very harsh cutoff score, and it is one of the highest, other than like the London universities and the Oxbridges. Newcastle is the next highest after that. And sadly, I would say I would not, in this circumstance, I wouldn't waste an application on it because this is in the 7th decile, and last year they didn't take anybody below the 8th decile. So I think it would be a bit of a waste of an application if I'm honest, but again, it depends on the circumstances. Like maybe this person is able to commute to Sunderland, for example, and yeah, there are other options available depending on their scenario. So it's really hard. I feel bad that I can't just give you blanket, like when you get this, do this, and that's what people want. But this is the thing, it's nuanced, and that's why, to be successful with it, you have to really dig deeper into the weeds. And that's why I would encourage you to not think UCAT score equals this. It's like, it's a factor of many other things. And the last one, so an international student from Canada predicted excellent grades, but UCAT isn't great, third decile. Is it even worth applying? So, I mean, again, it depends where we're going, right? For the competitive universities, I would say don't even bother. But if we want to get into a UK medical school, it is still possible. You can, but it's harder, no doubt. However, there are some universities last year did have difficulty filling their international spots. So it's always worth submitting an application. And again, remember, it's not just about the UCAT. There are other elements of it, and if they are well done, then it can, to some extent, compensate for it. Now, Lancaster made international offers to people last year who in the bottom end of the fourth decile. Aberdeen took some from third decile, and even UCLan geared up for international students. They don't request that international students take the UCAT. So there are still some options. But as you're probably bored of hearing me say, it is very nuanced. So we do have to think of context. It's much wider than just simply, X equals Y. So if you want some help if you didn't do well in the UCAT this year, I would just encourage you to really think strongly about the FutureDoc program, because we will take you from start to finish. We'll have everything in place. We'll make sure that you're prepared and you have as low stress journey as possible. If you've got the UCAT and you want to still apply this year, but you're not sure where to go, you can give us a shout as well, and we can help you find which of the 4 best universities for you and get everything else about your application in order. So if you go to the FutureDoc website, you can find it in the description. Submit an application to join us, and if you qualify, we'd be more than happy to help you. Thanks for watching. I hope you find that useful. The other video is here for the results that I break down that came out just yesterday. So I hope you find that useful as well, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.